大家好啊，今天是2024年的11月18号。今天给大家分享一个洪灏的最新专访啊。其实洪灏的分享呢，这个真实可信度是英语大于粤语大于普通话。那视频中呢，他分享了对特朗普上台后可能增加的关税以及地方政府的债务置换，他对这样的一些事件发表了看法吧。好，我们这个废话也不多说，一起来看一下他的分享。
Grow Investment Group. Hao Hong, always great to have you on the programme. What can we expect then from this data trifecta, and will there be any evidence of stabilisation in the economic activity?
Yeah, well, I think October could be a better month for the Chinese economy. Reason being, there was a very strong stock rally. So when I was traveling in mainland, I can sense, the jubilation amongst the crowd, and also, consumption numbers could be substantially higher as well, because of the wealth effect from the stock market rally. And also, in terms of the housing market, because October tend to be a seasonally strong month. And also with the stimulus as well. So we're seeing, for example, Tier 1 cities, Beijing, Shanghai, all reporting stronger sales with better pricing. So I wouldn't be surprised to see, a better set of number for October.
Okay, so we'll wait and see, but, I have to make this point, Hao Hong, and I'm sure you would agree that we love data, we all do. Many central banks are data dependent, etc. But this is history. These are rear view mirror numbers, right? I think looking ahead, the thing that everybody is actually really wanting to know is, look, U.S. tariffs with Trump, how high? In excess of 60%, or what are you talking about? How are you thinking about this right now, and what China's response might be in terms of fiscal stimulus?
Yeah, well, I think, with all the appointments in recent days in the Trump's team, one should be too surprised that, we should be prepared for the worst case scenario. Even though a tariff wouldn't be 60% on day one, but I'm pretty sure that, there's a path towards, a substantially higher tariff on Chinese goods. But, if you look at the experience from 2018, most people would think that, well, because of the tariff, the U.S. Import price would go up, etc., etc. But, what happened back in 2018 was that, the Chinese exporters depreciate the yuan substantially and also lower the export price to maintain the exports to the U.S., because it's a huge important market for Chinese goods. So I think as a result, initially in 2018, at least for the first 8 months of the year, we're seeing U.S. import prices actually coming down, but then there's also a very substantial depreciation pressure on the Chinese yuan to offset the tariff impact. But I think, this time around, because one should be expecting tariffs would be substantially higher, then I think, the pressure on the Chinese currency and also, on the Chinese goods would be even more substantial than last time.
Oh dear, yeah, we've already crossed 722. This is what spot is at right now. We've heard calls as aggressive as 8, maybe 8.5 on dollar China. But what I really want to know is, I think we agree that tariffs, when they do hit, they're going to be incremental or gradual. They're going to be drip fed. They're not just going to go up to 60% on day one. I get that, all right? And maybe that's a good thing. But Chinese companies, though, publicly listed ones, how are they going to be able to adapt? I know, let's say, Chinese EVs, right, even with tariffs going into Europe, right, they're still able to make money because nobody can make EVs as cheap as the Chinese giants. But with the U.S., if you're talking about tariffs of 60%, eventually, I mean, how much margin can these Chinese companies afford to lose, and how are they going to offset or adapt to that?
Yeah, I think the U.S. is very determined to put a lid on the Chinese EVs. I think it's already taxing 50 to 100%. I'm not entirely sure of the specific numbers, but I think it's very, very high, 50 to 100% on the Chinese EVs. So these days, when you're traveling in, for example, in the U.S., you don't see that many Chinese EVs because, the import price is just way too high for them. But I think, when you're traveling in Southeast Asia, for example, you're seeing cheaper Chinese EV models, being driven around. So I think, China is, trying to explore markets other than the US and Europe. And I think because the Chinese cars are cheap enough, and even for the lower up and coming Asian populations, they would be able to afford it as well. So as a result, you're seeing in countries in Southeast Asia, the Chinese EVs are actually quite popular.
Yeah, Hong, it's interesting that Xi Jinping in APEC in Peru is trying to diversify the export destinations as well as a precautionary principle. So that's noteworthy. Getting back to the domestic economy, the debt swap deal at local, provincial government level, to what degree is that going to help out the property market? And are we seeing any signs of life there?
Yeah, I think the local government is actually, trying to sort of maintain its cash flow, because this year the land sales, proceeds from land sales is down another 20–30%. So I think many of the poorer local governments is, finding it very difficult to make ends meet. So as a result, some of the governments actually, local governments actually finding it hard to pay salaries to public servants, for example, and also have to resort to other means such as fines and penalties to get extra incomes. So I think it's very disruptive to the local economy, right? So for example, some local government could put unreasonable fine on the local companies who may have conducted illicit business in the past. So things like that. So I would say that the 6 trillion over the next 3 years, just to help alleviate the debt burden for the local government, would help to a certain extent. I think the official figure for the hidden debt on the local government's balance sheet is about just under 15 trillion yuan. But I think in actual fact, if you count in LGFV, the local government financing vehicle, I think the number is substantially larger. So I would say 6 trillion is helpful to a certain extent. I think it's probably going to help local government pay the salary. But I think in terms of resolving the situation, the local government debt situation and also the property market situation is far from being over.
All right, so takeaway from what you're saying is not enough more help is needed. Understood. Hong Kong, very quickly before you go, there was a time when EM high yield, in terms of weighting, was dominated by Chinese high yield, right, including for property developers. Obviously, that's not the case now. It hasn't been for some time. But we've been hearing increasingly from a number of guests the last few weeks that Chinese property developer high yield bonds, offshore, dollar paper, not onshore, is looking increasingly attractive to them. Is it to you?
It really depends what they do next in 2025. I think if they can, issue special purpose bonds, for example, and then use these proceeds to buy up land reserve and also the inventories that is outstanding on the market, that's going to help big time. I think there are at least 400 million square meters unsold inventory standing in the market. That is about 1 year's worth of supply. And also, if you count in the second-hand housing and also all the buildings are being built, obviously you have inventory that is probably about 3 years of sales right now. So I think a very substantial, forceful policy initiative needs to come out next year. I think what we've seen in the past couple of weeks of the 12 trillion yuan package is mostly for this year, right? So and for the next couple of years. But for 2025, we need to see a substantial expansion of the fiscal budget deficit. Maybe it can be done through ultra-long dated government bonds and also some special purpose bonds to replenish the fiscal revenue so that we can take the total spending upward to 12 trillion and up to resolve the situation. So I think people who are betting on the high-yield Chinese bonds, US dollar bonds, is really betting on a very substantial policy coming out for next year.
Okay, Hong Hao, fantastic talking to you. Appreciate the time. Good week.
那在分享中呢，他认为关税是渐进的啊，也就是说是分阶段进行了。这个在之前的一些投行的机构啊，尤其在大摩的分享中，他们也是这么认为的，不会说特朗普上台以后一下子加60%的关税，这可能会有一些 渐进的分批次的去加。此外呢，关于地方政府债务置换呢，他认为地方政府的隐性债远不止15万亿啊，是更多。那一些机构和大学预测可能是60万亿左右。那进行债务置换呢，对经济的发展有一些帮助，比如说可以去发一些工资啊，发一些共同的欠款啊之类的。但他觉得力度还不够，所以他认为明年还会有新的政策出台，会扩大财政的支出。其实他说的这些呢，也没啥新意的啊，基本上大家也都知道啊，或者是一些机构也都是这么说的。但我还是那句话啊，我个人认为啊，如果想刺激内需，需要房地产止跌回稳啊，最好股市呢也能走出慢牛，不然房子跌跌不休，股市呢也跌跌不休，大家呢资产呢都在缩水，你再加上动不动的裁员降薪，大家其实不敢消费啊，就好像前几年一样。你说当时大家的收入比现在高hơn多少吗？也没有，对吧？那为啥大家当时敢消费呢？主要还是大家觉得自己的房子在增值，对吧？好像自己的身家更厚实了，哪怕薪资没有多少，可能也就几千块钱，但是他就是敢消费，那财富的幻觉呢，给了他这样一种底气。当然了，我不是说我鼓励房子啊要涨，但至少说要做到止跌回稳啊，不然的话，经济短时间内是好不了的。因为中国百姓的大部分的财富，80%的财富是在房子上啊。好，那今天的这个分享呢就到这里，谢谢大家。